Howdy, y'all. To any subscribers that I may have, those of you who are just passing through, or those that are just checking in on this. I don't have all the bells and whistles just yet, but I'm working on it, trying to get my video production skills up to par. Forgive us my trespasses. um, but I'm doing my best. I do have the details. This is cathartic for me. I'm actually learning things as I'm making these videos, as I play back everything in my mind, and it makes me think out certain things. Just like the name of the podcast itself, the permission statement. The permission statement is usually that part on the thinking cycle when an activating event takes place, and then we give ourselves permission. Our body will lie to us. Our ego, at most of the time, is our ego is the great liar within us that says you must do this because, right? And I'd love to interview people. I want to get him up with my brother-in-law, but I'd like to interview him too because he's a perfect example of that permission statement in the past, and then in the not too far distant present, past present, I guess you'd say, not past, but just past, But same thing with myself. And what I keep encouraging folks to think about is to give ourselves permission to do good things. And I'm going to be interviewing folks who made that, their permission statement was taking the hardship or the suffrage and using that as a permission statement to do good with it. A drive element for positivity, right? And so I'm not here to invalidate anybody or validate anybody or invalidate a. I'm here to validate a premise by supporting it with the narrative, and the narrative is chaotic. It started off with the Heist family here in Napa, which I'll dip into who the Heist family is that I was born into, where the violence stemmed from, how it was handed down to me, my responsibility not handed down to my child, so that I can think multiple generations out, that if my son has a child or daughter or son, that I'm not just looking at my son, I'm looking at my grandkids if I am so fortunate to have any, or even your great grandkids. You have to look that far out. Don't just look one generation down, because that's how it was handed down to me for multiple generations up, from Ernst Heist, all the way down to Robert Heist, and so on. And so I'll be getting more into that, but I want to give you all the complicated narrative that how the violence and abuse that my sister and these other kids endured, Roy Bartow, Nanette Bartow, Catalina Paulina Maldonado, and myself, that altered our life in a way that, you got those tangents, where that an event can kick off. It can give you probably multiple different possibilities out of there, but then that one goes here. So all those little dots that get you there, they don't have to necessarily get you here. And sometimes if you remove one, it'll give you a completely different path. But for me, those circumstances led to me running away, and me being a runaway, ending up being arrested as a juvenile here in Napa for possessing nunchakas. I was just practicing with them because I was a runaway and I had to protect myself. I was sleeping in dumpsters and opening unlocked cars and sleeping in them, in an elevator in downtown Napa, off the side of a small ridge, kind of, in a tent. I was doing it for real, going to sleeping at friends' houses, and but for the most part, I was out there. So I carried the nunchakas, and I was practicing at an apartment complex, and somebody saw me and called the police. I ended up, not long thereafter, a friend of mine took me to Taco Bell on Jefferson, and then they came in and they were cool about it. They're like, we're not really tripping on this. You weren't trying to hurt nobody. Somebody just saw you practicing with them. No harm, no foul. Where do you live? And once they asked me that question, and I told them, like, I live on the streets, I'm a runaway, they were like, whoa, they got concerned. And I understand their intent. Their intent, because there was two of them, their intent was they were worried about me. They were worried about my well-being and living on the streets. I was just a kid, I was like maybe 13, 14 years old. And They don't know the whole narrative that I'm getting the crap beat out of me and me and other kids were molested and harmed and stuff. So they don't know that, you know. I mean, I hung myself from an almond tree at a house on Elliott Drive out in American Canyon at 9 years old. The branch broke. Isn't that crazy? There was a doghouse in the backyard, and I got up on the doghouse because I knew it was going to happen when we got home. Well, when they got home, I would get home early from school from Napa Junction, and I just knew because I had gotten in trouble at school. I just knew, you know, I was just so tired of it. And like I said, there was a lot of other stuff going on, and so I did that, and the branch broke. Right, crazy, because here I am now, the survivor, um, striving to live on behalf of my son and on behalf of the other people in my path that lost their lives either to their own fault or not to their own fault, to live for them on behalf of them. My permission statement, my drive element, and so those officers didn't know all that stuff. They couldn't have known. It's not their job to know all that. They were just like, hey, there's a teenage kid right here. He's telling us he's a runaway, and we need to do something. So they arrested me and charged me with the possession of nunchakas. That decision, which I'm gonna take y'all to the juvenile hall and the whole thing and show you, that decision altered my life in a way too. They couldn't have known that though, that it was going to detrimentally impact me, because once you go into juvenile hall, your life goes to a whole different, whole different um, set of survival skills. Now you're in a predatory, but you're already in a predatory environment. Now you're in a predatory environment. So you got to make sure you got your dukes on them, and it starts a cycle. Because I was first at Napa Juvenile Hall, and then sent to juvenile hall from there because my father had custody, because I was being bounced back and forth from San Diego to Napa after I started running away from home. And San Diego Juvenile Hall is definitely a step up, because now there's a whole different caliber of gang members that the juvenile officers have to tend to, and you got fights going on and, you know, riots and different thing on a juvenile level. You know, kids getting ready to go to YA. Definitely much more high speed, level of criminality, more sophisticated even, because you have the international border. So you'll have juvenile federal inmates that are being housed down there, juvenile murderers and everything. And for those of you who don't know, you can receive juvenile life here in the state of California, and that's like 7 years. Some people will be charged as an adult and get an M number because they're too young, meaning they'll go do a good chunk of their time in youth authority. Then when they're old enough, they get rolled over to the California penal system. Some of them will just get juvenile life, which means they're housed as a juvenile in the California Youth Authority, which does not really exist no more, with the exception of, I think, YTS maybe. But they would be there for like 7 years, what they call juvenile life. Your juvenile years are gone. And I met many people in the Youth Authority that suffered that, you know. And like I said, I don't have the ability yet, the acumen on how to like put stuff up on the computer, so I'm going to do it kind of, you know. So that's Michael Muto right there. That's me. That's Fred Nellis School for Boys. I started off there at Fred Nellis on, I think, Roosevelt and Roosevelt Cottage, and then after I went from Roosevelt, I went to Tyler, and they were both military style programs. Leadership, esteem, and leadership, esteem, ability, and discipline was the program on Roosevelt. I was there with quite a few people. Well, when we were in Norwalk, that guy Alex Trejo, Animal from Hazard, he was on the American Me movie. He's the kid who pulls back the thing before the dudes go in there and stuff their face in the cocaine. Jose Lucero, which was Droopy from El Cajon Dukes, he was in the lead program with me. He's on that program, the Mayans. But I saw him get like a kickstart. He got into some trouble after YA, maybe attempted murder or something like that. Went and did a bid. And then I saw him on Dr. Phil trying to teach these young people, you know, exactly what I'm saying. Is like, hey, man, do you really think, yada, yada, here's what it is. My approach is different. But I saw Jose Lucero out there doing it. Now I see him on the Mayan show. He was at Fred T. Nellis. This young man was 14 years old. Now, if you look at his face, look at that face, that stern look. He was always sad, man. He was always sad. I knew him from the halls before we went to YA, and then when we got there. And Fred C. Nellis School for Boys Nellis is called the time bomb for a reason. You'll go there and you're going to get in some trouble because it's the youngest of the institutions. and you're gonna have to fight because that's that mentality. Like a lot, like other places you're still gonna fight, but you're really gonna fight in Francina, the school for boys, gladiator school. And this young man was 14 years old, and there was an older woman, maybe in her 30s, 36, I don't know exactly, I can't remember, it's been a long time, in Oceanside. She was sexually enticing, having, sexual relations with him and two other young boys, giving them drugs, getting them high, and then and got them to kill her husband, to tie him up, to beat him up, and then light him on fire. And so he received juvenile life for murder. And his when they say juvenile life, that's what they mean. They take away your whole juvenile life, and you're released as an adult. Um, but many of these people were my peers, right? So I got to meet a lot of people along the way. But that moment in time when they took me into custody for the Nunchakas led to me going to San Diego. In San Diego, they ask you, have you ever done drugs or alcohol? And at the time, I had smoked a little bit of weed, did a little bit of drinking, but nothing hardcore. And so you answer yes, and at the time, there's a lot of funding and financing for these programs. So, they'll send you to a program quick like. And so I was sent to Our Family, which is a long-term residential treatment center, adult and juvenile, which doesn't exist anymore. And I'm going to explain the advantages of that right now. There's disadvantages, but there's also advantages. Long-term residential treatment center. This is based off the old Hazleton program, like 70s and stuff, when AA was kind of like in its early youth. And these programs, confrontation, like all these different groups. There was a family, there was 3 tribes, Diogenes, Siddhartha, and I can't remember the other one, but it was called Our Family because they broke it down into family, and there was leaders, and then there was groups and confrontation. There would be a group called confrontation. It'd be in a double wide trailer with the entire family there, 100 or more people, and it's and it's in a circle, and one person hits that hot seat in the middle, and everybody. So they'll be bringing up things like, say I was doing something that I shouldn't have, and I was trying to on the low doing it. They'll confront you on it, but it doesn't just have to be about that. They want to find out what's the issue, what got you to do that, like where does that behavior come from? Let's get real, and it was an intense therapy group, but it was beneficial, even for a 14-year-old kid who didn't understand a whole lot there. Those tools were helpful later in life. When I did need them, I already had them in my Rolodex, in my arsenal. It was already locked and loaded with what I had learned there. So imagine a room full of 100 people or more confronting you on your behavior. Not confronting you just to like, fuck you, you suck, No. They're like, hey, you got anything you want to tell us? Maybe it's like, and they already know. They got the whole details right there. You know what I mean? They know what it is. And so they're going to see if you're going to get honest about it. And then they want you to get down to like, hey, talk to me. Is there a reason why this? Is there something that happened in your past, or whatever it is? And they'll get you to get real. And you're in a place where you can do that because you're among other people that understand that we're not perfect. And that's where the juvenile and the adult part of it really came into handy, because you have young kids that are just on the start of that upward potential negative climb. And you got people that are further along in that. And so those people can remember how they were when they started. These people can see where they could potentially get to, and they could benefit the other person by saying, hey man, look, get it how you live, but this is what happened to me. Because some of those people have already been to prison, they've been to county jail. These kids are just juvenile hall. They have nobody in Our Family had been to California Youth Authority. Because if you go to California Youth Authority, that's after Our Family, pretty far down. Like if you don't get it in these younger programs, earlier programs, I say younger meaning youth authorities, definitely for something different. You're going to end up in youth authority. And so they give you all these different, camp and yada yada before they send you to California Youth Authority. And if you don't get it, that's where you're going to end up. And because you always hear about it, and it's just like it's mess around until that reality hits. And when you're going to YA, for sure that you're going to have to you're going to take it serious. From the moment you get there. I remember all the way up there, like everybody knew what it was. Even there were some tough dudes with us, but they know that they're going into an environment that's going to put that to the test. You know, people getting their heads split open with batteries inside socks and all that stuff. So it's not no joke. And so that program, Our Family, is supposed to be like either not a precursor, but it's supposed to be something that stops you from having to get there. But for me, I ended up going either way. After Our Family, I went to foster care. Foster care, I left and I went down to San Diego, and I was introduced to a life. And then I got into more complicated substance, as well. 16 years old, and San Diego is what San Diego is. And yeah, like I said, gunplay. I mean, I first time I used a weapon in anger was at 16, but I had been shot at first on that circumstance. Not that I was returning fire in that one, but there's a story I'll tell you about our friend Cynthia. We'll call her Hormiga. And what happened to her, and then later on, even with her husband and her, they kidnapped her husband in Mexico, in TJ Tijuana, and they tried to get her. She got away. Well, she escaped the attempt, but I'll get into that story because it is a trip where she told me about the place that her husband escaped from, that they were holding them out, and kind of supports my premise about the instability of the frontera. But so at 16 years old, I was already at that level. Like, you get introduced to it quick. You meet a certain group, and it wasn't a gang or nothing like that. It was just a group of guys who were like family, And I'm not going to do the whole gang family thing, none of that stuff. No, it was graffiti crew, and you're going to raves and the party crews, and there's taggers, and there's hip hop, there's break dancers, there's gangsters. And the San Diego dynamic of gangster is so different than most other places in California because of that international border. It's ballers. Like, so you'll see some knucklehead thug gangsters ain't got two pennies to rub together. Always broke, going half on a 40. And then in San Diego, it's a different dynamic because those dudes are introduced to money, and the concept is once you have that money, you have that power, and the femmies come, the femmes, the baddies, woo, the ballers, they get them all, because those girls are wooed, those women are wooed by that money, and them being able to go spend money as well as being at the side of a baller. And so dudes are banging, but they're balling banging. And then eventually they end up in prison. They make these connections, and you'll see neighborhoods that were enemies working together, which was a trip for a good while there. There was like 5 of them working together who were natural enemies and everything, and something happened in prison. They were all out there balling out of control, and if you had to fight one of them, you had to fight all of them down there at TJ on that revolution. And you'd see it happen. It was a trip. But that was the thing. There was ballers, there was Rastafarians, there was hip hops, there was socials, the socials. Oh yeah, there was the paisitas. There was a little bit. You got the Bloods, you got the Crips, you got dudes that ain't even either one of them, but they're just in the reggae. The Irie. You had the Rastafari. Like I said, the Rastafarian scene in reggae and all that was deep in San Diego. The Reggae Fest and everything. That was part of culture in San Diego. And so it's all an addictive introduction. You're at a party, 400 or 500 people. There's Jungle Juice, the DJ spinning. It is captivating very quick. And there's the thrill and the excitement of cruising Highland and going to raves and Narnia and being on Highland and hitting switches. It's something out of like Boulevard Nights, but reality, and there's a whole layer under that narrative, another narrative under a narrative under a narrative. But we'll get into that, excuse me, later. But those officers had no idea when they were arresting me as a runaway kid trying to escape violence here in Napa from the Heist family and the O'Donnells, that it would lead me to all that. And then that would lead to the narrative that we're spinning here. That would go to Amsterdam and me having Southeast Germany on lock and all over Europe, Amsterdam, Brussels, Luxembourg. I'm not proud of any of this either. I'm not here to glorify any of that, but the experience was crazy. And as we get there to Tony and Lorena and why they sent me to Amsterdam and how I had money there and yada yada, like I said, it's not something I'm trying to glorify. It's just a crazy part of the narrative to where now I'm a father. I'm in Napa where I grew up. as a kid, at least in part. And I came here for peace, and that peace is just saturated with devastation now because I made a choice to pull somebody from there who wasn't 100% ready. They seemed like they were ready. We've achieved so much together, but they weren't ready to let go of their addiction. And I get it. Addiction's hard, and I love this individual. And it's not going to seem that way because of whatever I say, but skip past all that bullshit narrative. Those people that are like, oh man, the toxic people that encourage your negative behavior, that's just like the drug connect that's trying to give you strong and cheap drugs. You think they're your friend because they're hooking you up, but they're really hooking themselves up. They're moving your addiction along, and you're putting money in their pockets. So, I mean, but you don't look at it that way. It's like, oh man, I love you, man. You love me. Oh man, this is the best. Who hooks it up? But that's not really your friend. That's thinking errors right there. And so I'm not here to glorify any of that. But this is all in turmoil. The people who didn't protect me when I was being abused as a child are now the people who didn't protect my child in 2017 and 18 when I came to them, said that he was harmed. And then when I came to them and said, hey, can you get my spouse some help? She's a wonderful person in certain senses. Definitely. I mean, she's a great person in many ways. She has a problem. She makes some chaotic choices, which could potentially harm my son. And I have a responsibility as a father to hold her accountable and hold myself accountable together. Like, we could do better, man. Our son deserves better. But she's surrounded and has surrounded herself by these people that are toxic enablers that just, no matter what, they have to. The ones that didn't know, still. But then the ones that did know, and then so hopefully, and I doubt, because they're more than likely narcissists too, I doubt that even after what I'm going to be putting out there, they're not going to step back and look at it and be like, well, maybe I shouldn't have been, maybe I should have. Because if you really care about people, if you really care about somebody, use them as the reason to make that change. Use them as the reason. Jennifer, if you really loved your mom, give that to her on her past as she passes on to the next life. Give that to her to see a genuine change in you. That would make her happy. You think I'm taking care of her, I'm taking care of her. What would make her happy is to see that positive change in you, that she wants to see that you're good. You're not good like good and bad. I mean, She wants to see that. Give that to her. Let that be the positive change, and let her be the driving minute. Tell her, you know what, Mom? I'm messing up, and I want to make sure that you see me as you transition over to the next life. As a parent, I know you're not a parent, but you're a child, and I know you love your mom. As a parent, that would mean the world to me. If I was dying and I saw my child's life in chaos, that would hurt. Even if I wasn't dying, seeing my life's child in chaos. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. And I'm relentless. And all those people, the toxic enablers and stuff, you are all my enemy. And we can get it. But I'm here by nonviolent means. I'm here to talk, whatever. We got to get them up, whatever. Just say when. And we'll do it right here. I'd love to do it. Let's do it for the followers and for the viewers and for the people. Nothing personal or nothing like that. Let's just get them up. I mean, it's like playing a game of chess or checkers, spades, whatever. Thumb wrestle. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare war. Right. But I need to go back and put a pin because I was telling y'all about what happened. Now I told y'all, Angelica was part of the squad. My first wife, Tat, and I say Tat Money. That's just what people called her, but that wasn't her name. Her name was Tat. And her father was kidnapped and murdered by the Ariano Felix cartel, dumped on the freeway and all that stuff. She was part of a squad of girls. I was part of a squad of gentlemen, and we were all fond of each other and knew each other. And one of the girls in that squad was Angelica. And Angelica, like I said, was down there partying in Tijuana, somewhere near between TJ and Rosarito, from what she told me. And her friends had left. She was down there with guys and girls. Her friends had left. She woke up and this dude was raping her. and she pushed him off. And when her friends got back, either they beat him half to death or shot him or something. I don't know. I think he might have got smoked. But not long thereafter, the Mexican police showed up, and from what I'm told, they were beating her and raping her repeatedly for like several days, putting guns to her head, saying she was going to die and all this. This is the Mexican police. I'm not saying the Mexican police told me. From what I'm told, it was them who did this to her, and that led to her substance abuse. And so she had been fighting substance abuse for quite a bit of time. Like I said, her uncle was killed in that one incident. There was all kinds of other things that happened, but she was just doing her best to survive. And like I said, she's a wonderful content contributor now. She's a mother of 3 wonderful children. She's married. So like I said, I ain't gonna put her whole name out there, but she was girlfriend and boyfriend with Lucky. We'll call him Lucky. Like I said, everybody's got a name, and we got a lot more murders to go through here, unfortunately. Like I said, then maybe I'll get a full picture. Instead of looking through the keyhole, I'm going to expand the lens. But we'll go through what happened that day with Lucky. So I should have went before that and explained to y'all what happened on 26th and Imperial. Remember I told y'all about the icons and everybody, and then there was the people, the children of the CEOs and CIOs and stuff, all these companies. They lived in a loft adjacent to the icons that had moved there from North Park over to 26th and Imperial, and we were all living there. And I was working at Marcus Evans. Wasn't in a gang or doing that. By then, like I said, I had retired completely from. When I came home, when I was in Texas, I read something, I learned something, and I came home. I worked construction, and I officially retired. I went to my friends, and I'm like, I'm with nothing. I want to be just myself as an individual. I want to cause nobody no stress, no harm, be no divide between nobody or nothing, and just let that be who I am. Just 100% California. Not east, not west, not north, not south, not within a city to be south side, east side, west side, southeast. None of that. Just want to be me as an individual so that I can meet anybody from anywhere and be like, hey, if they're good people, they're good people, right? And that was what I learned. And so I officially retired. And I put in quite a bit of work, so it wasn't like anybody was going to tell me what I could or couldn't do. Some tried, but I was like, well, fuck you want to do, So, anywho, I was working as that guy Alexander Cozy, who owns Concert Group Logistics right now, global shipping company and all that stuff. He hooked me up with his job, taught me everything I needed to know. Every day he came home from work, I came home from construction. He came home from Marcus Evans, and he would teach me what I would need to know. And so then Trevor Marney was the divisional director, got me the job, yada, yada. I was coming home from work, and when that other incident happened, but maybe a week before that, the secretary from Marcus Evans, she worked at some club, I think it was called Deco's in downtown, and she hooked us up with the VIP. So I brought the one who got locked up that they came looking for, who's also the one who is said to have lured down my friend's brother, right? Like I said, I'm not going to say no names. He's the one I was driving around with in TJ when I met Tony and Lowe. Long-time friend since I was a child or a teenager that I learned a lot from. Like, this is my best, and not anymore. But so his brother was with us, and his brother's a really good dude, but he's a wild firecracker, man. We'll call him Roy, and he was just spitfire, and he's just who he is. Cool as a fan, but he is who he is. And so there were some guys there that like, I don't know, he just didn't like him. I'll be honest with you, he was starting shit for nothing. He had a little bit too much of drinky, and I had already learned my lesson, so I was like, well, handle your business, if that's what you do. But I didn't want him to clock this dude, but he clocked the guy, and blah, blah, blah. So they got kicked out, and then I got kicked out, and I was going to fight the guys out on the street because it was just turned into a mayhem. And we all found each other, and I said, let's go to the place on 26th and Imperial. Now, mind you, that wasn't my place. I was just staying there with Alex Cozy and with Taylor Jackson, which was a suicide model, and some of the other folks, right? And so we were all upstairs. We were hanging out. And as we were leaving, like I said, they were serving a warrant for somebody else across the street. And right when we walked outside, it was like 4 or 5 guys. They immediately turned their, like, who are you guys? From what I'm told, they were actually at the wrong address. They were coming at us when they were supposed to be serving across the street. And so Roy runs back up inside the house, and it's a loft. There's no way really out of the other side. So he tried hiding in this little back corner. The police go up in there. It's dramatic, man. Like, guns are drawn, and he's hiding right behind Taylor's room. She's a girl. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. They're like, where'd he go? She's like, there's somebody over there. They sprayed him. They bring him out, and they arrest him as a result, and his brother. So eventually he goes back to the Bing, and then he gets deported out of into Mexico. And the brother, he got wrapped up into custody prematurely, and that's when those guys were like, hey, where's our money? Or that guy, the one that got killed with the three other people, and TJ that sent the guys that kicked in the door. And when I say kicked in the door, like kicking the door, and like maybe 4 or 5 feet away is where my friend was sitting. It's a very small place. Like, you open the door and you're in the living room, and that's where he was sitting. And like I said, Mom got busy with that Makarov, and those guys are so lucky that she didn't know how to manipulate that weapon, because they'd be dead right now, rightly so. So out of that became all this conflict, because more people started coming, and then that wasn't cool, because what if dude's daughter would have been right there? Because Yaya would sometimes be there on the floor, so they could have kicked that door open and hit his daughter. She's a little girl. Just things like that. And it wasn't Lucky's fault. Lucky had nothing to do with this. He was just friends with the same guy that I was. And over time, I had to think about it once it got kind of sticky and icky after that circumstance, and why me and that other individual are no longer on good terms. Because I had to start to see that, man, dude will cause havoc to almost anybody. And whether it's intentionally or otherwise, I got to call a spade for a spade. And things got divisive. And I made a decision at that moment, well, not long thereafter, after there was a few things that happened, and it was like, hey, man. So that incident that happened on 26 Imperial, he gets locked up. Those dudes, come over. That chaos happens. I get involved to take a stand at the side of it. And when I say I take a stand, I don't fuck around. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody's gonna do you harm, and I'm saying I'm gonna ride with you. Those of you who know, like, it is what it is. But I'm infantryman, and all those skills incorporate into how and I go about what I do when I go to protect somebody. And again, that's that abused child trying to fill that hole of nobody protected me that should have. And so I felt the need to protect other people. And eventually I realized a lot of times I was protecting people that were putting themselves in these circumstances. And then when that gets taken care of, they'll get themselves in another circumstance. So you just got to let them do what they got to do, and let them pull their head out of their own ass. But the brother that started the whole conflict, not the one that got these cats in a tussle with Lucky and all that. The other brother, the cool one that started the fight, and that we wouldn't even been at my place for that incident to happen, had he not been all tripping and trying to start a fight with those dudes. We didn't try to start. He swung on him, hit him, dope fiend on one of them. Dope fiend means you sucker punch somebody. And it didn't really do much, because the guy was like this big and my friend was like this big, and he jumped up. But anyhow, so he gets deported to Mex after that. And over the years, unfortunately, somebody came, from what it's been expressed to me, that they came to take action against the guy that caused his brother. And they look quite a bit alike, not exactly. And I was there with them to bury their father, and I saw the pain of Roy and his father when he passed. I loved that family. I was very close to them. And they came to take out the brother, and they thought it was him, but it wasn't. It was Roy. And his fiance's little boy was next to him, and they shot him, and a bullet hit the little boy. I'm told that he was okay, but he needed to get, so his fiance had to take off to get her son to the hospital, and Roy was still there, bleeding as she left, and then he eventually he passed away. So Roy is no longer with us, and it's just crazy that just that one incident of him hitting the dude in the club, and everything was cool. And it's like, you know what I mean? That's what I mean by the activating event and the permission statement, and some of the choices that we make can make some crazy stuff. And for Roy, that decision, if you really sit back and do a flow chart, you can draw that one incident to him dying in Mexico, because he wouldn't have been there. He didn't have to be there, but his actions led to that. And it's crazy, you know. And so we give ourselves permission sometimes, and that permission can be our end, whether it's my brother not wearing his body armor in Afghanistan, that could have saved his life potentially. You know, those decisions that we make. And now, lucky, I'll have to dip into that one to his cousin, because that's another crazy story. There's a couple of homicides that came out of that one, and it's like, so I hope y'all will get the I'm painting a little brush over here, the clouds and the bush, so that once I get to the whole thing of, okay, you got the introduction, you got the body, and the clothes. So I'm giving y'all all this stuff. So when I get to a point where I'm like, hey, I'm here, homelessness, homeowner, family man, dedicated to them, I should have never had to beg and plead with the respondent in this matter that this should be mission critical and this should be front and center, is our family, not the toxic choices and the toxic enablers from our past and the present. We can't bring in new toxic enablers. You know, you distance yourself from the other ones, hope for the best for them, and then you keep that shit separated from your family. But that wasn't the case. And when I asked for her to get help, I became the enemy, which sucks. And then all the other enemies out there, the enablers, are the heroes in her mind, because that's what happens when you're dealing with a narcissist. And so me as a father going and asking for help shouldn't be having to deal with all these obstacles of all these well interwoven enablers and associates. Because she started, when we got here to Napa, she went to Napa Empowering Women Services, and that agency, people branch off from there and go to all these places, the district attorney's office, social services, different parts of social services. And then those people go from those places to even higher positions. Napa County positions at the county supervisor's office, potentially. Well, the county supervisor himself had a really strong relationship with these characters that we'll be getting into. And what they've tried to do to put their hand in this and utilize their connections to sit there and try to prefer this action just so they can advocate for the negative behavior of my spouse, despite what it could do to my son. So I'm relentless, and I'm going to bring the truth to the surface. I'm going to bring every truth to the surface. They want to lie. They want to play games. They want to send Michelle in there to try to commit perjury. Well, let's open that up. Okay? If they want to bring Marvin, Cheddar Bob, Lee Mace into court, try to commit perjury to try to impact the narrative of an investigation, okay, well, let's open that up. You know? A fact ain't a fact unless it's a fact. But I appreciate you all being here. Ride with me. We got more to come.